All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Diamond Dust. I am your, one of your hosts for Wireheads. And, of course, we have...
Hello, I am Emmerron. I'm the other host here, the lesser of the two.
I'm gonna say shit like that now, all right?
Look, it's been a long week. It's been a really long week.
It's been a long week with all the media posts that we've been doing. And you guys might be sick and tired of us talking about it. But you know what? At long last, we get to talk about it. So guess what? We're going to talk about it. That's right. We're going to talk about the funny yellow box that everybody's been asking us about for the past while.
Yes. Tonight's episode is... tonight's episode is wholly dedicated to the silly yellow box. We will have some limitations still because it is not out yet. So please bear that in mind. We are not going to be able to talk like really hard numbers on anything, like how much humanity loss does this bit of cyberwar take or that or whatever. But we will answer questions.
Or how many hit points Adam Smasher supposedly has, which we all know the true answer. He has infinite hit points until he beats V.
Right. He cannot die. That man cannot die, will not die. And that is all you need to know about Adam Smasher. Next question.
Don't worry.
But yeah.
Don't worry, kids. As long as you walk on the right side of the sidewalk and you go to school and go home and you make sure that you pay your gang's protection clauses, the boogeyman won't come for you this week. Maybe next week.
Probably. Probably. Yeah, there's a saying that has proven true many times. Adam Smasher takes no gigs that involve zero casualties. So
or minimal or no collateral either.
Exactly. So kids, if you stay far enough from the guy that Adam Smasher is hunting, you probably get out of it okay.
All right. So I suppose enough of the memes. Welcome everybody. Welcome. All right. So kicking off, I kind of want to dig into my favorite half, or like one of my favorite parts so far. We got where do we want to start? Because we got an hour on both sides here. Because like we got the rule book, we've got the Edgerunners handbook. Oh, we got so many different places to bounce around.
We can talk about the ending to the jacket, which is absolutely heartbreaking.
Hey, why is there a red dot in the back of your room?
Oh, Mike, I didn't mean it. I was joking.
I don't think that's Mike. I think that's Rob with how feisty he's been recently. I swear that man's blood pressure has probably gone through the fucking roof at least twice this week. Woo.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't envy Rob his current position in the week that we're in. Oh my god. I mean, you and I being admins in there, we kind of see a little of it, but it's like whatever he's dealing with is easily more than what we've got to deal with.
And we're not going to get into all the details, but apparently I guess I missed it because I was, sleeping after a long night of work. But somebody said, oh, well, I know things that you don't know.
I remember that. Yeah, that was fun. But yeah, we're not going to comment too much on all that. As far as to where to start, I mean, Diamond, you've got the lead half of this episode. Talk and I will follow because I could talk about honestly any part of this box. It's like so the thing is, chat on both sides here that I think everyone here needs to be aware of. Diamond and I both have a credit in this book. So let's start there, I suppose. We've known about this and we had a chance to read this like a month and a half ago when we did like the final proofread pass on it. And that is insane, kind of, to just start there. The fact that we both have a credit in here is kind of mind-blowing to start with.
Right?
So let me just tell you how hard it is for us to have said absolutely fucking nothing for a month and a half. Or not quite a month and a half, we could say nothing, but about a month there, we could say absolutely nothing, right? And then like we got it in our media inboxes because we're two of the medias that did receive review copies. So now we've been able to talk about it, which is why you hear us basically going off on shorts and things like that about this so much, because like we've had to hold it back for a month. Like it's been a long time.
Yeah. And I suppose if you hadn't, I just want to mention this now, just so it's out of the way. But of course, we'll talk about it probably here down the road. Shadowscar also comes out this Saturday for free free RPG Day, and it is getting such a beautifully warm welcome with some good stuff over on Hero Forge and also on Sirenscape. So
yeah, the Sirenscape thing was a wild announcement today. And the Sirenscape one is free, guys. So like that's the real crazy thing. I think the Hero Forge ones are
they do have a cost.
Well, they have a cost, but they're also, I think, they're on the horizon. They're not like coming like on the release of Eyes in the Shadows. I think it's coming in probably closer to
JSK.
We don't. I don't even know if we have a release date on them yet, but I would assume that they would probably be more toward either the starter kit or whenever we get the full rules, because like Cody was kind of saying, like their goal is to release the full rules by the end of the year. So that's still crazy to me that we've still got all of that and Forlorn Hope, and we're like halfway through the year already, which is just fucking crazy. Like Artal is going all just way too far this year. Like just how much they were able to release in a single calendar year is kind of nutty.
So I suppose let's start with the Edgerunners Handbook, because I feel like for anybody who opens up this box, this is a great spot to start in all of this. Open up the Edgerunners Handbook. Okay? If you're watching this, open the Edgerunners Handbook. And for anybody who's played Cyberpunk RED, the opening is going to look a little familiar, where they introduce you to the 3 rules of Cyberpunk. Number 1, style over substance. Number 2, attitude is everything. And number 3, live on the edge. And of course, I'm not going to go, I don't know if I want to go into too much detail, because I want you guys to go read about it. But all of this is narrated from the point of view of everybody's favorite conspiracy theorist in time of 2077. Maximum Mike. That's right. We get Maximum Mike for this.
Yeah.
And I just, oh my goodness. It's happening. Oh boy. Looking over what the Edgerunners Handbook has to offer, it gives us an introductory view to 7 of the 10 roles. Now, just to clarify, media, exec, and lawman do not show up in the mission kit, but they do have some rule adjustments made for the time of 2077.
Yeah, I've said it in a few of my videos about it so far. Lawman, exec, and medias, you all do still get things in the box technically. But that's going to be more toward, because everything in the Edgerunners Handbook and the the jacket itself, obvious to this, they're mostly in service of the mission that the mission kit is portraying. So there's one chapter specifically in the rule book, and Jay has gone on record saying this, which is why I feel comfortable telling this to all of you as well. Chapter 3 of the rule book in the box is the source book portion of this. So for those of you who already have Cyberpunk RED, that is going to serve as a sort of add-on section. And there are some things there that you could use with the mission in the kit. like the cyberware described in that section and the weapons described in that section. Technically, you can get those on your characters from the mission kit. There's some specific provisions for doing that. Mostly, though, that stuff's there to make sure that there are bits and pieces compliant with Red and its rules, and like, you know, answering a lot of those questions, like, well, how much does it cost me to make my gun into a tech gun? Well, that section's gonna have all the rules on that.
Yeah, they're all that will be covered in here, but of course, if for those of you guys who may have kind of missed it, the roles that will be showing up in the kit are going to be fixers, med techs, net runners, nomads, and it appears the name has evolved from rocker boy to rockers for that. So interesting. It's starting to drift away from rocker boy Manson of 2020, and that's okay.
I like
change with the times.
Yeah, I mean, I like how that is much less gendered. The non-gendered language on that, because that's always been one of those weird spots for me personally. Has always been like, I've had a lot of female rockers at my table, and so it was always so weird because they would be like, well, I'm a rocker girl, and I'm like, yes, you are. Like, that is totally fair. So yeah, like I understand the gendering of that language wasn't necessarily because it was a gendered term in the universe, but it's good to see that divorced for a certainty. I do like that better that way.
And I guess, you know, with like such a drastic comparison, or like such a drastic expanse of time between, you know, the death of Rocker Boy Manson back in early Cyberpunk 2020 to, you know, 2077, it makes sense. It does.
Yeah. Of course it does. And I mean, and that's like, we also hear plenty in the video game at the very least, and there may be references like this in the anime, but like, there's a lot of people who refer to rocker boys as just simply rockers, you know, and it almost sounds like a street slang-ish use of the term when they bring it up, but like, to see that translate into this is kind of cool because that codifies it. Yes, so, and hello, Lilith. Welcome to my chat.
Oh, hi,
Good
Mom.
to have you here. Hello.
And then, of course, also Tex. You also, Tex will also be making a return as well. And then, of course, for you guys who love the lore of the world, and especially all the background that comes with it, we will be getting a refresher on the history of Cyberpunk. And talking about everything from the collapse in the 1990s to the corporate wars, the time of the Red, and it goes all the way from 1990 all the way up to 2076, leading up to a certain incident that leads to the mission that happens in this in this box.
Yeah.
Which, by the way,
Diamond,
what's up?
I need to ask this question of you personally as we're coming through this section. Of all of the lore listed here, because obviously some of this is rehashed because we've seen it in other Cyberpunk products, right? Of all the lore that's listed in this section, what is your favorite tidbit that we did not know previously?
So, I didn't realize actually where exactly Rosalind Myers fell into the whole spill of all this. Apparently she's no spring chicken to being president, and yet she acts like it during the game.
Yeah.
And you know, becomes president and decides to commit to a massive war, which I wonder if we're gonna get an expansion on the Metal Wars. I really would be interested.
I would be intrigued to see if, because I'm gonna be curious to see, because we've been told it's been enough for repetition at this point that we know pretty concretely we're gonna be getting a 2077 core book at some point. The question is just when we're going to be getting that source book. But it wouldn't shock me if we had more detail in that. It would also intrigue me to see if we get any kind of like adventures or scream sheets centered around that era, to flesh it out a little more, or at the very least enough lore that we could do it ourselves. Because like I would design some scream sheets for the time of that. That would be kind of wild, honestly. I think the bit of lore I like the most on this page is the discovery. Well, there are two, and they're kind of interlinked, but I think the one that I like the most is that oh well, the other one's actually not on this page. It's on a different page, and I was kind of surprised not to see it in the timeline. But the one on here is that the official attempt to clear the rogue AIs from the old net failed and officially was considered a lost cause only a year before the core rulebook technically takes place in 2044, yep. Which is wild. And that is officially when the Blackwall construction begins. So like, they say like the Blackwall is kind of a rumored thing in 2045, but we don't really get a sense of how recent it is in the book. So this like giving us like, okay, this is the year it began. It's only a year before like Common Day in the core red is like, that's wild to me how that's like that tied up against it.
I suppose one of the other things that I was kind of looking at was also the fact that because I didn't know exactly what happened with the Caribbean Exodus, like how long ago it was, but it looks like just kind of in the mix of like all that. I wonder if 2062 like sorry, just spill the beans a little bit, because I think it is mentioned in game also when the Caribbean Exodus happens. Do you think
it wouldn't surprise me?
Do you think that's when they cemented like that the Voodoo Boys would flip from where they were to what they are now?
They mention in Red's core rulebook that like there are already some Haitian refugees even at the time that are like not comfy with the idea of all their religious and cultural iconography being used to essentially justify like a sadist gang doing what they're doing. So like I think the shift is a little more gradual than like suddenly the Exodus happens and now they've reclaimed it. But my guess is that once the Exodus happens, like that's the final nail in the coffin for the old version of the gang. And that they, you know, from that point onward, they shift their identity pretty rapidly into what we see in the game.
And also, kind of in the mix of all, also at the end of it all, I do like how it kind of ties us up to where the jacket picks up from.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think the jacket, it's probably taken place like, because if the incident happened in, you know, if the Martinez incident happened in 2076, the jacket's either late 2076 or early 2077.
It's supposed to be a month. I think they say specifically that it's a month after the events of Edgerunners.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if you haven't watched the anime yet, it's 10 episodes.
Now's your chance, guys. Like, you've got probably just enough time. If you're watching this live right now, if you're watching this on Spotify or later on YouTube, I'm so sorry, but it's already too late. They've been dead forever. But the fact is that if you're listening to it on either of those platforms, this very likely came out yesterday. So everything we're talking about it's already out in the public now. Yeah. We're like, unless you haven't bought it, you're not missing anything. You can go to DriveThruRPG, $15 gets you this right now, and you don't even have to wait on shipping. So, but yeah, I think because I think that the time skip, if I remember right, in Edgerunners between the start and the end is roughly 6 months, if I recall correctly. That's where we see David get all chromed the fuck up about halfway through. That happens about half a year's worth of time from when he kind of becomes an Edgerunner. So this is, yeah. So this is going to be probably like, if we're looking from the start of Edgerunners as our tell sign, I think we're in like probably Q3 or maybe early Q4 of 2076. Would be kind of where we're sitting timeline wise, I would imagine.
All right. And also, I'm trying to keep it as very general overview over the Edgerunners Handbook as I can, so that way, you know, you guys, you know, well, I mean, Dia talked about it. Well, I gotta read it. Well, read it. There's all sorts of good stuff in here, including a certain piece of cyberware. Everybody has been like, well, I want this one, not this one. This one sucks. I want this one.
There's a whole chapter here, by the way, we're also not currently covering in the Edgerunners Handbook, which, if you permit me, Diamond, I would like to take a very small tidbit out of this.
Which chapter is that specifically?
Dark Future Technology. So it's out of chapter 3. So this is
okay.
Yeah, this is where we talk a little bit about cyberware. I'm not going to spoil much from this because I've already talked a little about this in my shorts. But, and I think I will talk about this in my review as well here, that's due out sometime tomorrow. The idea of net running and the net in general in the time of the 2070s, some of you may notice in 77 and the anime, most of the Neocorps don't get much of a mention. And for a few of them, that's like just because they're kind of like more minor players now. Some of them, it's because they got absorbed by other corporations. There's one, however, that I think everyone was kind of wondering, what the hell happened to Ziggurat? They're this massive fucking corporation in the time of the Red. They own the whole CityNet. And if you weren't aware, because we were kind of aware of this already from the video game and data shards and things, the CityNet really hasn't faded as a model. Like that is still the primary model we're running by. So where the fuck is Ziggurat if the CityNet is what we're still using? They don't exist anymore. Netwatch shuts them down. They're gone because Netwatch found them doing some shady shit covering things up.
What?
And I'm not gonna go out. Oh, you didn't read this, did you?
No, I can't believe it. Giant information corporation that has control on everyone's information tries to cover up shady shit. Wow.
Well, and did so in a way that Netwatch did not like, most importantly there, right? Like, it's not just that they covered up shady shit. So they covered up shady shit that Netwatch didn't like, because Netwatch is the one that shut them down. So like, I will let all your imaginations in our audience go fucking wild on what happened, because you read this, it will speak for it, but it's fun, like reading that section, and it's not in the timeline. You have to read the section on the net in chapter 3 of the Edgerunner Handbook, but like, it's so good, and it gives a little bit of a teaser, a taste, if you will, of I think what like full dive net running in the flavor sense looks like in the 2070s. We do not have full rules for it. That is nowhere in the kit. It expressly explains that we have nothing like that in the kit itself. So like we'll have to wait for a source book on that particular system. But we do get some details on what it's like and what kind of tools certain netrunners will use. And it's an interesting read. Let's just say that. If you like us and our namesake of the podcast here are a wirehead or interested in net shit, you will love this. So definitely check that out when you get the book.
All right. Of course, also terminology is covered in here as well for some other odd and end things such as Chew 2, which is the fuel that everything runs on. And of course, we also are covering in here just a very brief glance that I think it's actually like fully covered in the rules. Power weapons, smart weapons, tech weapons, and of course also melee weapons. Which,
yes,
before anyone asked, yes, some of the more iconic melee weapons are in the not iconic, but some of the more notable melee weapons, and Cyber is in there as well.
Well, we've already had it confirmed many times at this point. That was Jay's little spoiler to us that he gave us. Was the we got the projectile launch system. Basically, any ARM-based cyber you could get in the video game, you can get in the book here, or not the Edgerunners handbook, but the rules in the mission kit. So any of those monowire Manus blades, Gorilla Fists, and the PLS, like I mentioned, all those make an appearance, and they're all surprise, they're all really good. They're I don't know what you want me to say. They're just really fucking good.
And then next, of course, we have a history of Night City covered by Professor Ripper
Jackson, baby. Let's go.
Interesting.
Good old puns. I love them.
Well played. But yes, there's a history covering Night City, which, of course, if you do want some more detailed notes on anything in the history of Night City or in the history of, well, the world of Cyberpunk, all the way up to the 2040s, just grab the core rulebook. I think it's like $30 for the PDF and $60 for the print version, and you get the entire game in one book. Everything.
And if any of you are coming to Gen Con, Artel has a habit of giving digitals away with physicals there. So if you want to buy it and can wait till Gen Con, if you're going to be there, that is another way for you to get both. Just throwing that out there as well. If your local game store doesn't participate in Bits and Mortar, which is the other way to do it, Artel does for conventions. So they can provide you that code. Just save your receipt if you do buy it there. And usually they'll have an email or a QR code for you to submit a copy so that you can get both. But yeah, just throwing that out there as well. As I know, some of you are probably listening to this and you might be new players to the game. This is going to be a starter kit after all. So if you're wondering how to get more, that is one way that you can go ahead and do that when the time comes.
And also, of course, they talk about how everything gets up to the point of 2077 in some pretty specific details as well. Talking about, you know, what happens during the 2060s and what happened during the Unification Wars as well. Including how Arasaka makes their grand return back to the shores of, well, the NUSA. And,
well, yeah, not the NUSA in the case of Night City. Night City's part of the Free States, but
back on North American soil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then they cover the districts. Like we fluctuated in a lot of different districts over the time, from like 19 districts in Cyberpunk 2020 to 21 notable districts in Cyberpunk RED, and now we're down to 7 districts with also their sub like neighborhoods as well, and they even make note of notable locations as well. Mm-hmm. You know, such as places like the Arasaka Memorial, Empathy, Time Machine, Dicky Twister, of course, mentioned in there. Dogtown is in here. So like all the different locations that you probably visit for gigs or uh, major plot locations from the anime, they're in here.
Yep. Yeah, this is going to be a really good list for you to refer to, GMs, if you're like, damn, I wonder what clubs exist in the part of the city that I want to focus on. They are literally, they give you a laundry list. And like, this weekend, I was going through in what little spare time I had, or when I needed my brain to not be in like YouTube short creation mode. I went through and I started replaying Cyberpunk 2077 on a new character. And I will say, like, reading through this and then doing that gave me such an appreciation for some of these really minor locations that, like, you just don't even really think about them come the time of, you know, the end of the game, because you're just like, you know, whatever. It's this one place I visited for a mission one time. But like when you read these and then you realize, oh, I can go visit Club Empathy in the game. Like there's a gig that literally takes place inside of Empathy, and you can go visit it, and it's wild. There's a Seventh Hell is the same thing.
Yep.
There's a whole gig that takes place inside of Seventh Hell, and like now that you know that it's there, you go visit it, and you have a whole sense for the tabletop now of what the vibe is there. You're not gonna have to, like in Red, there's a little bit of guesswork, I think, when we kind of approach things. At least I know there was for me for a little while, till I became really familiar with the setting. That like is like, okay, well, like, but what does it look like? How does it feel? What's the music like? You know, all that kind of stuff when you talk about clubs and places in Night City. And there's none of that with this, because like literally I think almost everything in here exists in some form of the game.
Let's see what other things are in here as well. They do talk about all the new megacorps that have made it to the top of Night City right now, which, you know, I was very surprised to see that Kiroshi is actually considered a megacorp at this point. I didn't realize that they were classified as such in 2077.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me, given that literally, like, their optics are just everywhere. Like, that you cannot buy a Cyber Eye unless it's a Kiroshi at any Ripperdoc in Night City.
Fair enough.
So like, when you've basically got at the bare minimum, a de facto monopoly in something like that, like, yeah, you're a megacorp, full send.
You would think that Raven Microcybernetics would still have a play in the game there.
They were kind of on the way out in the time of the Red anyway, because they only, I think, had like, I think it's like the top 2 floors of their building, and the rest of it was sublet out. So like, it's assumed, I think that like they just haven't made a recovery properly yet, because like they exist. We know that they exist in the time of 70s, but like that's about all we know about them. They aren't a major player in most sides of the world. I think just about the only tech they actually do any development on that we see evidence of in the game is the like cybernet, like cyberdeck, like netrunner equipment market.
Let's see. Of course, Zeta Tech also ended up as a megacorp, which actually they do have a building at City Center, don't they? I actually, I'm trying to remember if they do.
Kiroshi?
Zeta Tech.
I believe they do. I believe they've got offices around the city if you're looking close enough. It's like both Zeta Tech and SoftSys have like a ton of offices around the city.
And then of course we also they do cover gangs, which of course you have some of the old timers, such as the Tiger Claws, who've been around since they were the Tiger's Claw back in the 2020s. You got the Maelstrom. 6th Street from the time of the Red has evolved to, well, whatever they are now. And then you got some of the new gangs, such as, and also the Valentinos do make a return in the 70s. Or at least they come up from underground.
Yeah, I was about to say because they existed in the 20s, right?
Yep.
Yeah, because they aren't really a presence in Red, but like, yeah, it's like the slow burning kind of movement.
And then, of course, you got some of the new gangs, such as the Animals, Bargist, the Mox, and they show up in here as well.
Yeah, the mocks specifically actually show up in the jacket. I won't say in what capacity, but the mocks do make an appearance, which is kind of cool.
And also, somehow, REO Meatwagon survives. I didn't realize that the ambulance that Gloria was in was, that.
Yep. Yeah, that's... So the funny thing is, this isn't even going to be a spoiler for anyone if you've read the preview pages available on Drive2RPG right now. Those reveal, because we get David's little synopsis from his page in the book here. And it reveals that, yeah, Gloria, his mother, works for REO Meatwagon. And yeah, they're an interesting little outfit. The fact that they've survived this long is kind of wild.
And then, of course, NCPD, what they've sadly devolved into. Or evolved into, however you want to look at it.
Like, is it they're just as corrupt as they ever were. They just made it official. Like, the NCPD, for those of you wondering, in the time of the 70s, is now a corporation. They're actually a full-blown corporation. They're no longer a public entity like they are in the time of the Red or in the 20s. They have been bought out, and that is how the NCPD has survived despite all of their problems over the years. Because even in the Red rulebook, they're described as being like terribly underfunded.
Yeah, but you still have some good eggs in there, like Cavalry, Shepherd, and Cherub.
Yeah.
And then I noticed that they kind of really shortened it down in here, but there's going to be a section that talks about your everyday life in the time of the 2070s, which, as someone from like my character was developed from the time of the Red, you kids have it easy. Oh my gosh, man, it's so bad you have to have scop for dinner. Like, back when I was, a young edge runner, I was fucking having to eat kibble out of the bag.
Back in my day, we opened up our Ziploc of kibble every day. We crunched on that shit till the sun came down, and we liked it. God damn it, we liked that shit. Yeah, no, it's food is saying it's better is probably not entirely accurate, but it's
fair.
By comparison, relatively, it's much better. There's spice and seasoning in food that isn't like wholly artificial.
Because from what it looks like, the kibble pretty much phases out unless you are absolutely like scraping the bottom of the barrel and like you got like maybe only a couple dollars in your pocket.
They mention like Pan Am as you're riding out of the desert mentions very specifically in one mission I thought was kind of funny. I was like, wait, why have I not heard the word kibble like anywhere in the game other than like her one mention of this? She mentioned as you're running out to grab Hellman that she and Scorpion were talking about riding out of the city and just getting a bunch of canned kibble and like riding out and doing that for like food or whatever. And I was like, well, damn, like that is not a food stuff I've heard much, because like no one eats fucking kibble in the 70s. It's like you go down the corner to your local little schism, you buy a fucking burrito triple XL and you munch on that, and it's like 3 Eddies. Like you could just do that, and like why would anyone buy kibble if I could just buy a burrito out of a vending machine. Like, that probably is gonna taste better, at least. Like, nutritionally it might not be any better, but at least it tastes better.
Look, also, old bitch Dia here, you kids had it real easy. We had to walk when the end cart wasn't working. And even when it was working, we still had to walk.
You kids today, you don't know what it was like when half the city was a fucking combat zone. We had to walk through that shit. Endcard didn't service the entirety of South Night City. The inner Eastern Bank, fuck, that place wasn't cleaned up until somewhere in the mid-50s.
And then, yes, getting the word. Back then, we had some different options for how we got our news. Now, you guys, you got two options. Corrupt corporate news or corrupt corporate news. What would you guys like?
Well, I like the corrupt corporate news that doesn't always favor Arasaka. Thank you.
Actually, above table, I don't know which one that one is.
The N54, WNS is like notoriously, like in the lore. It's funny. You can look this up on the wiki right now, guys. So anyone listening to this or watching this right now, you could go on the wiki and you could see like which corporations really like Arasaka, and WNS is like one of the largest that are like a proponent of theirs, and they cover Arasaka pretty favorably. Whereas N54, even in the 2070s, is like a little less like, yes, Saburo, your size 13 would be great tonight. Like that, they aren't nearly that desperate for views.
And of course, also they talk about where you get stuff, which also, speaking of getting shit.
Oh, getting shit is so good in the 70s.
You kids have it so damn easy. You guys can go out and go get a shotgun without having to go talk to your damn fixer and just hoping they don't fuck you over and give you a gun mart Bubba Buster or some shit like that.
Yeah, you can literally just go out and buy whatever you want. You'll have to pay the corpo markup for it, which is not cheap, but you can buy just about anything you want as long as you get the ads for it and the markup. Which is where fixers come back into play still, because like fixers skip the corpo markup. The corporations are out to utterly rob you in the transactions they do with you.
What? Really? Wow, I can't
I
believe
know.
it. Giant friendly corporation that runs my city wants to rob me?
You'd think they'd care about the little man more, Diamond, but they don't. Apparently, they don't give a shit about any of us.
I just wonder. I guess maybe this is a future Edgerunner problem. But what happens when the corporations take all the money? Like, what happens when they've hit the bottom? Like, they've scraped everything. What happens? What happens when the clock runs to zero?
I guess capitalism implodes, or something.
The simulation is over. Restart the game.
Yeah, like, I don't know. That's where the blue eyes come in, I suppose. Like, yeah, like, another corporate war happens, this time led by a cadre of edgerunners that are, like, sick and tired of being oppressed all the time or something, maybe? Like, I don't know. Like,
you know what worked real well the last time?
Oh, yeah. A little U-235 shot straight down an elevator shaft.
Well, it seems in the case of 2077, it's causing big stocks to crash on the biggest corp in the city.
Oh, there's that too. Yeah, that's one possible ending to things for sure.
Yeah, I guess that would be a nice goofy little DLC I would like to see, is like stocks and like what kind of actions we can do to really fuck with the corp's money. Actually, I kind of like that idea. just like, what can we do that can just really rock the world? Because sorry, jumping back to the time of the Red here for a moment because of how level the playing field is. You could probably do something that might not be considered, that might be a drop in the bucket for these guys in the 2070s. But like at the time of the Red, stealing, a Militech Gorgon and, some other assets could probably really ruffle some feathers. Especially if it makes it onto the media.
Yeah, it depends, I guess, who you're stealing from and like what they're going to do to get back at you. At that point, you start rolling your enemy life path entry again, and you're like, all right, who'd you piss off? What are they going to throw at you? What are you going to do about it? Like, that's going to be like the way you kind of have to determine that. Some of those entries are probably going to be decided for you because it's like, who did you piss off? Well, whoever was the guy to answer for the mission that you just fucked up. All right, cool. What are they going to throw at you? Probably a small outfit, at least within the corporation. And what are they going to do about it? I mean, they'll probably, if they can find you, at the very least seek to detain you and bring you in, or just kill you, like depending on what they think the value of bringing you in alive is.
And then finally, in the last part of the Edgerunners Handbook, and we'll wrap this up here on the half-hour mark, so that way we can jump around it as needed. But here in the back end of the Edgerunners Handbook, we get bios on all of them. Now, I won't talk about these. Like, chat, I promise I will not talk about this stuff. However, I'll just kind of let you know, I don't know, some little guy named Adam Smasher is in here. Like, you want to know about Mr. Smasher? I guess you can read it in here. Which,
he's my favorite part about David's crew.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he very, very, very explosive results, I'd say. Oh, man.
Truly an impressive member of the team.
Oh, man. I still want to know what the fuck happened to Morgan Blackhand. I hope we actually get some news on him at some point.
Mike has said that CDPR doesn't get him because he has plans for him.
Oh.
So that means I think if we get something for him, it'll be during the time of the Red.
Well, yeah.
So,
I mean, I bet Morgan is pretty old by the time of the Red. So, I wonder.
I mean, it depends how old he was in the 20s, because he'd be that plus 20 years, basically.
Yeah, fair enough. But if he was like anywhere like along the lines of, well, if he's probably about the same age as like Johnny and Rogue and folks,
he might have been a little older than Rogue, but I mean,
yeah,
with the right corpo healthcare plan or the right tech, access to the right tech, like, and you have to imagine, because Militech was the one who set up the hit squad, if they were aware of his survival, they very well may like have set him up with something, mostly to make sure that he never got the idea to bite the hand that fed him. That'd be at least the way I'd interpret that, but we'll have to see. We do know that Mike, at the bare minimum, Mike has a plan. Oh, thank you.
Oh, hello, Everwife.
My leftovers.
Yes, Diamond says hello even though we are recording. She waves back aggressively.
But let's see, who else we got in here? Of course, we got background on David. And also just a small touch on Gloria through David's backstory. So
yeah, I like what we learn about. I like what we learned about Gloria.
Dorio. Actually, her background, I found that. It's like, oh, that's real surprising.
Yeah, I think Dorio. Ironically here, I think Dorio has the most text out of any of the crew, including David, which is like kind of wild. Because she's also, I would argue, the character we get to know the least in the midst of Edgerunners.
Yeah.
The only other one that we know about as little about is maybe Pilar.
Yeah.
But like we get glimpses into the others pretty well. Even Falco, we get a bit more of an insight into the kind of guy he is, and obviously like we meet him again a little bit, at least at a distance, in the 70s. So, or in 2077. What am I saying? The 70s. 2077 in the video game, because you get your the mission to recover David's jacket from Falco to a certain extent, or he sends it to you rather. But yeah, that it's interesting. I thought a lot of their backgrounds were really touching. Some of them, like Rebecca's, surprised me. I will say that. Like,
Kiwi
as the most clickbait thing you could take from tonight's episode is Rebecca's background will surprise you.
All the backgrounds of the Edgerunners crew, you won't believe Rebecca's. Anyway, but then, you know, Kiwi does have a background in here. Of course, Lucy, we get a glimpse into Lucy's background, like a really, like, the real gritty parts of it. But
a real faint glimpse, yeah.
A real brutal one, too. And then also, of course, Maine, which, honestly, I'll tell you right now, you Phantom Liberty fans, you better go read Maine's backstory.
You
go do it.
You will probably all be a little surprised. Yeah, there's some stuff in Maine's story that's like incredibly interesting for any of you who have played Phantom Liberty.
So, with that in mind, overall, the Edgerunner's Handbook, it's kind of a mixture of a few different portions of like the core rule book, but it's like everything you need to know about how the world functions, and the also some of the concepts that the 2070s bring versus the 2040s. It's a very different world with a very different set of problems, and where the 2040s is what happens when we lost everything due to somebody making a very terrible decision, and 2070s is what happens when someone has everything. Is kind of the way I see it.
Yeah, it's the 40s explore what megacorps at their weakest look like and what the world does when that is the case. Supply chains are fucked and the only thing holding the world together are nomads. To the time of, yeah, the 70s, where like megacorps are back, their power is back in full, their boot is firmly on the throat of society all the time. Like it's gonna be, it sets us up into an interesting playground for new ideas, because we have the data crash is still very felt. Like I said, the city nets aren't gone. Like, the city nets are, if anything, they've grown, and the lines between districts have blurred enough that like you start getting the ability for netrunners to, you know, connect district to district, doing chair jock shit like they did in the 20s. But they're still not doing LDL shit from like one side of the world to the other to low Earth orbit. They're not doing any of that yet. Like, none of that is feasible as of yet. So it's interesting to see the difference there. There's a lot of stories that you could tell in either of those points. Or the real cool thing is, because enough of the timeline and some of the events connecting the two ends are there, you could technically set stuff in the middle. You could do something in the 50s or the 60s and like have the information you need to like do some of that justice.
So, I think on that note, I guess looking at this, probably, I don't know, a question for you, Emmerron. Because, like, I think I've mentioned my campaign idea that, like, a campaign I had in mind for if I decided to ever run a 2070s campaign, it would be very much more taking place in Dogtown, where it is, you are dealing with the aftermath of V coming through and fucking up the balance of power, and now, you know, Hands wants to play at it, you know, to run the, to take over the, take things over. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you have a campaign concept in mind for the 2070s?
For the 2070s themselves, I haven't cooked that quite yet. I have an idea though for Neon Inferno Season 3 taking place at think the year I'm slowly narrowing in on is 2060. Because there's some really interesting stuff that happens in the timeline by the early 2060s that like I think I want to explore a little bit.
Okay.
So like there are ideas that rely on the kit and the information in it to like make those things possible. But yeah, right now my thinking is mostly in the prototypical elements of like what will become the 70s as it's leaving the like power structure and the power balances of the red and moving forward into what we will soon recognize is that reascendancy of mega corporations and things like that. So that's kind of where my brain has been thinking, because it's like it's fun to finally have some of the connecting tissue that brings us from the 2040s into the 2070s and understanding a certain amount about how the timeline for that stuff likely would have worked given some of the signals for what we already see in 2045. Big hint, guys. Rockland Augmentix made the Neuron in 2045.
Yep.
And it is the first ever internal agent that does not require a Chiron to display anything on your eye. Keep that in mind.
All right. Well, I think on that note, folks, we're going to be continuing over to part 2 over on Emmerron's channel. And of course, as always, if you are a fan of the podcast, a fan of what we do, subscribe to us on YouTube or, follow us on Twitch.